In our last video, we talked about Apple's satellite features and why they're about to get a lot more serious. The headline was simple: Amazon is buying Globalstar, the satellite company that currently powers Apple's satellite connection on iPhone 14 and newer, and at the same time, Amazon locked in a separate agreement with Apple to support satellite connectivity going forward. So instead of the nervous question people keep asking, is Apple going to lose satellite support? The rumor-driven answer was basically the opposite. This move stabilizes the whole satellite backbone and gives Apple a much longer runway to expand beyond emergency-only features. We went through what's likely to stay the same, like Emergency SOS via satellite, messages via satellite, Find My support, and roadside assistance. And then we zoomed in on the upgrades people keep circling in leaks. Things like Apple Maps via satellite, sending photos over satellite, better usability in tricky places like vehicles or near windows, and even talk of standard-style satellite over 5G, not magical speeds, but more interoperability when cell towers disappear. The bigger theme was that Apple's current satellite setup feels like Phase 1, very controlled, very reliable, very narrow. But to expand it, Apple needs infrastructure that can handle more throughput and more frequent everyday use. That's where Amazon's scale starts to matter. We also tied that to the next hardware window. The chatter says bigger satellite upgrades may be gated to newer phones, and the iPhone 18 Pro timeline lines up with a Phase 2 push, especially if it gets a more efficient A20 class chip and battery improvements that make satellite connections less punishing on power. Today we're staying on the iPhone 18 Pro, but switching from satellites to cameras because there's a leak that targets one of the most annoying little photo quirks people have quietly accepted for years. In our last video, we talked about Apple building a bigger satellite future, but this time the leak is about something you'll notice every day. The iPhone 18 Pro might finally fix that annoying sharpness drop in close-ups and group shots. Apple's camera reputation is built on consistency. You pull the phone out, tap, and get a good photo. But if you shoot enough people, food, pets, documents, or quick indoor group pics, you've probably seen it. The center looks sharp, and then the edges get weird. Or you try a close-up, and the focus feels slightly off, even though you did everything right. Now, a leak from Digital Chat Station says Apple may be lining up a quiet, but massive hardware change for the iPhone 18 Pro models, a variable aperture on the main camera. If that happens, this won't read like a flashy feature on a spec sheet. It's the kind of upgrade that changes the hit rate of your photos. Fewer misses, more keepers, and less of that "why does this look soft?" moment. First, quick context. Most phones, including recent Pro models, use a fixed aperture on the main camera. That aperture is basically the camera's light gate. It controls how much light hits the sensor, and it also affects depth of field, meaning how much of the image stays in focus from front to back. A fixed aperture is simple and reliable. Apple tunes the processing around it, and in many cases, it looks great. But it also boxes the camera into one set of trade-offs. If the aperture is wide, you pull in more light, which helps at night, but the depth of field gets shallower, which makes focus more critical. That's where you can get those moments where a close subject is sharp, but parts of the scene fall out of focus faster than expected. Or in a group shot, people not perfectly aligned with the focus plane can look softer. If the aperture is tighter, you get more of the frame in focus, which is awesome for groups and certain close-ups. But you also lose light, which can hurt in dim rooms and at night, unless the phone compensates with longer exposure or more aggressive processing. A variable aperture gives the camera options. It can open up when it needs light and stop down when it needs more of the scene to stay sharp. That flexibility is the whole point. So how does that map to the real problem people complain about? In close-up shots, you're often battling shallow depth of field and the minimum focusing distance. If Apple can stop the lens down a bit, it can keep more of the subject sharp without relying as much on computational tricks that sometimes create that processed look. In group shots, especially indoors, you want depth of field. You want faces in the second row to look as crisp as faces in the front row. A variable aperture can help Apple keep more faces sharp without forcing the camera into a noisy, underexposed image. And there's another part people don't talk about enough: highlight control. A wider opening can blow highlights faster. A variable aperture gives the phone another lever to manage bright windows, shiny surfaces, stage lights, street lamps, all the stuff that makes phone cameras freak out. Combine that with Apple's HDR processing, and you can get cleaner results without crushing shadows or turning faces into wax. Now, does this automatically mean DSLR level control? No, and honestly, it shouldn't. Apple isn't going to make you think about stops in the camera app for a casual photo. If this shows up, the win is that it works automatically. You take the same photo you always take, and the phone makes a smarter physical choice before the software even starts polishing. And this isn't the only camera rumor floating around. 1. The telephoto lens could get a wider aperture. That's a big deal because telephoto is usually where low light falls apart first. If Apple opens that lens up, you could get cleaner zoom shots indoors and at night with less motion blur and less noisy texture. 2. At least one model is rumored to use a new 3-layer stacked sensor developed by Samsung. The way to think about stacked sensors is speed and signal handling. Faster readout can reduce artifacts, improve responsiveness, and help with dynamic range and noise. That's not a guarantee, but it's the direction this kind of sensor tech usually aims for. Then there's the longer-term roadmap rumors, and these sound like Apple thinking several generations ahead, not one big jump at once. A larger main sensor, improved stabilization for the ultra-wide, and even chatter about a 200 megapixels periscope lens being worked on. Now, quick reality check. Leaks like this often mash together in testing, in development, and shipping next year like they're the same thing. They're not. So I'm treating this as if Apple may be exploring multiple hardware paths, and variable aperture could be the near-term change that actually makes it into a shipping phone. Also, variable aperture isn't some brand new invention.
A lot of people forgot that Samsung was the first to introduce variable aperture on phones with the Galaxy S9 series.
More recently, some Chinese flagships brought it back with more modern sensor and processing pipelines, and results have been better. So why would Apple try it now? Because phone cameras have kind of hit a weird wall. Sensors got bigger and processing got smarter, but the basic optics are still a compromise. You can do a lot with computation, but you can't fully compute your way out of physics. A variable aperture is Apple acknowledging that and adding a physical tool to improve consistency. And that word, consistency, is the whole story here. Apple already takes great photos. This rumor is about raising the floor, not the ceiling. It's about fewer weird edge softness moments. Fewer close-up shots where you're like, hold on, why is that not crisp? Fewer group pics where one person looks slightly smeared just because they were half a step back. Now, let's quickly hit the other iPhone 18 Pro rumors people care about, because cameras don't exist in a vacuum. Display sizes are expected to stay familiar, around 6.3 inches for the Pro and 6.9 for the Pro Max, with LTPO with OLED and a 1 Hz to 120 Hz adaptive refresh rate. Power-wise, the big claim is an A20 Pro chip on TSMC's 2nm process, paired with 12 GB RAM. If that happens, it's not just faster, it's likely more efficient, which matters for camera work. Video capture, computational photography, sensor readout, real-time HDR, all of it benefits from efficient performance. Timing is still the classic window. Mid-September is the expectation. But there's also ongoing talk that Apple may reshape its launch strategy over time, potentially staggering base models later. That part is worth watching, but for the Pro models, the September spotlight still feels like the safe bet. Design-wise, we're also hearing the phones may look similar overall, but with a thicker camera bump. If dummy units are accurate, the camera hardware could physically protrude more. That tracks with bigger optics, more complex mechanics, or just more ambitious sensor and lens stacks. And yes, colors. There's talk of a deep red. Pro finish, more maroon than the bright reds people remember. Treat color leaks as fun, not certain, but I get it. People pick their phones with their eyes too. So where does that leave you if you're deciding whether to care? If you mainly shoot in perfect daylight, you might not feel a difference. But if you're the person constantly taking indoor photos, food close-ups, quick family group pics, party shots, restaurant moments, or pet photos that never sit still, variable aperture could be the difference between good enough and nailed it. It's the kind of change that doesn't need a new mode, it just makes the default camera smarter. And the most important detail, this is still a leak. Digital Chat Station has a track record, but nothing is real until Apple ships it. Even if Apple prototypes it, they could scrap it if it adds complexity, cost, or reliability risk, or if the gains aren't consistent enough across millions of units. But as a direction, it makes sense. Apple's been sanding down the rough edges of the camera year after year. Variable aperture is exactly that kind of move. If you want to follow up the second we get more camera leaks, subscribe. And in the comments, tell me which photo type fails you most. Close-ups, group shots, or low-light zoom. I'll tailor the next breakdown to what you're actually dealing with. Here's the bold takeaway. The best camera upgrade isn't the one that adds new tricks. It's the one that stops ruining the moments you can't reshoot. If Apple really brings variable aperture to the iPhone 18 Pro, it's not about specs. It's about trust in every tap of the shutter. See you in the next one. Goodbye.